I wasn't prepared for him to show up at the tavern one day when I was filling in for Dad. No one came in after him, which was odd enough. As he sat down at the table, the stranger stared at me with eyes as green as the forest itself. "Shiraz, please," he said monotonously, not taking his gaze off my eyes. I nodded confusedly and bent down to rummage through the large amount of alcohol until I finally found the right kind. As I stood up, I almost dropped the bottle in surprise. The guy was standing right up to the counter and looking at me again. "How much do I owe you?" As if nothing had happened, he asked. Irritated and relieved at the same time, I suddenly noticed his appearance. Brown hair and a bright green sweatshirt. However, there was no badge visible anywhere. "What guild do you belong to?" I asked casually, pouring a drink into my glass. The stranger's lips stretched into a sly grin, and a terrible sound like a chuckle came out of his throat. "I have a temporary pass to Powena. Usually, world walkers come to Powena with a pass to do some important business and get the hell out. But this individual is seriously wasting his time here in some tavern? Extremely foolish of him, but scaring customers away from our tavern would be even more foolish. That'll be 80 shards of skinta." The guy didn't raise an eyebrow at the price, as if that was the price. He calmly placed the sack with a large amount of skinta on the counter and sat down at the table, slowly sipping his Shiraz. After counting the money, I looked up at him with a sense of discomfort. That's right, he was staring at me as usual, not forgetting the drink. "Why are you staring at me?" I asked him rather rudely, burning with an awkwardness I didn't understand. He was staring at me alone, but it felt like a lot of people on all sides. An extra skint, consider it a tip. This rude, strange man ignored my question. Suddenly, he stood up and walked to the counter with slow steps. "Why are you being so rude? Or rather, sad? You miss Eliza, don't you?" I'm out of breath. How could he know? But the sudden reminder made me feel sad and resentful again. After all, Lololoshka really seemed like a good, kind man. And all hope then, when Eliza fell from the tower, was only on him. But what happened? He just went the other way and let Eliza fall, crash to her death. I was wrong. He's just as rotten as the rest of them. The picture of my friend's bloody body will never leave my mind. Never will her lifeless eyes and the sheer horror in which she died. How her whole life in that short fall had flashed before her eyes and was gone forever. Her life had been shit, and it had ended horribly and tragically. Unfair. What if I told you I could make sure she was alive and happy? I was pulled out of my thoughts by the guy's rough voice. I squinted my eyes at him with contempt. "Why should I believe you?" The stranger chuckled and smiled wider. "My name is Abardo, by the way. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. I'm only making this offer once." Abardo waved his hand, and a great number of green particles that looked like little fireflies appeared around him. They rose up synchronously and began to approach each other, coalescing into a mass and beginning to take shape. I, unable to tear my eyes away, watched, mesmerized. Finally, the manipulation ended, and the particles revealed a picture, a small silhouette with the outline of Eliza falling down to the floor, and as soon as it landed, it shattered into many particles that flew away. "You have to admit, Eliza died very unfairly," I mumbled, but I felt as if I agreed with him. And her life, frankly, was just lousy, but just imagine, I, the most powerful world walker of the multiverse, can rewrite history. Eliza reappears and rises to her feet. And resurrect your girlfriend. There won't be a single living thing, no world walkers, no ordinary people, just you and me. And for your girlfriend, I'll make a separate universe where she'll be truly happy." Suddenly, more particles appeared, flying straight at me and enveloping my neck, while Elisa's silhouette changed to something familiar from her childhood, a person who had been disliked inordinately. Finally, the particles came together, and around my neck was a kind of leash, pulled by the man who, in my dimension, was pointing a gun at my family. Throw off the shackles of society's rules, and you'll feel true freedom. The very freedom that every human soul yearns for without even realizing it. Well, do you want to spend the rest of your life tied to this tavern, in this hole, really someone called home? As for the penultimate sentence, I would disagree, which I told him directly. I don't agree that my life at the bar is dry and lifeless. I'm having quite a bit of fun, and I'm happy. Ebardo took another sip of wine and replied, "You don't look it," he grinned wickedly. "It depresses you to have your direct enemy walking right in front of you. You want to get back at him, don't you? But those stupid morals of society get in the way. They get in everyone's way except maybe murderers who start being called crazy for a single offense. Amazing, don't you think? Besides, time will pass, your daddy will leave you, and the whole tavern will fall on your shoulders. And there, believe me, you won't have time to walk around Paona, haggle for milk, and blow off naive fools in love. The particles flew to the counter and, making a kind of chair, seated the likeness of me there. She folded her hands on the counter and rested her head on them, as if to show her hopelessness and despair. You'll be in the butt fox all the time, because that's your only income. You'll be literally dependent on it, and then there'll be competitors who'll smash your business to smithereens, and your pride won't allow you to really start dating, marry, and start a family. This world is not for you, Matilda. It's cruel and disgusting, and I want to change it for the better, remove all the causes of injustice and make it perfect. Well, do you agree? I didn't say anything. This performance really impressed me, but I knew there was a price to pay for everything. What do you want from me in return? I finally decided to walk over to his table and sit next to him. You're so smart. All you have to do is take the life of your hated friend. He's the one preventing me from creating a new universe. I froze in bewilderment. Take his life? Is he serious right now? I never wanted to get blood on my hands in my life, but I wouldn't be disappointed if Lololoshka died, and it was selfish of him to throw my friend to her death. Right now, it was like a demon and an angel, morality and revenge. And I guess revenge won out. You can't justify everything forever by saying, "It's better this way, do good." That wasn't an option, and then I looked confidently at Ebardo. I agree. It was a lot easier than I could have expected. Especially when Dad, in the heat of a big wave of customers, asked me to pass Lololosha a drink unknown to me. Well, easier for me, too. I walked around the corner and, taking the powdered poison Ebardo had politely offered me, I carefully poured it all into the drink, not sparing a grain of sand. Then I went out into the street looking around. Lololoshka was just leaving a shop. I walked at a fast pace, trying to get to him faster. Finally approaching my goal, I called out to him, "Pai!" Lololoshka looked back and gave me a tense look. He clearly didn't have a good feeling about this. I, trying to look as natural as possible, put on a nervous smile and said, "Daddy told me to give you this drink." I suddenly thought of a black joke and used it, giggling nervously. "I don't even know what you guys are up to." The guy just nodded and took the drink, immediately drank it and said goodbye, went to his neighborhood. Panic in the neighborhood counter confused Scar, as well as all the heads of guilds and the looks of friends Lololoshka, filled with horror and bitterness. And of course his lifeless body in a pool of his own spit-up blood. I expressed my sympathy, leaving the tavern and walking to an inconspicuous corner. Ebardo was waiting for me there to teleport me to the castle. Well done," he praised me. "Take my hand." I did, and we were in a large, cozy, lighted room in no time. It was a dining room, to be exact. There was a huge table in the middle with lots of food on it. What was there? Freshly baked turkey, a large number of cooked rabbits, several kinds of salads, and next to each chair, except one, a glass of red wine. It also stood in a bottle in the middle of the table. Behind it sat people unknown to me. Ebardo beckoned to me and went to the table, and I followed him. He pointed to a vacant chair and sat down at the one next to it. When I sat down, he took a bottle of wine in his hands and poured it into an empty glass, slid it over to me, and proclaimed loudly, Let's drink to the fact that Matilda helped us get rid of our worst enemy. Panic reigned. Monsters were bursting out from everywhere. The walls were being breached more and more, and the guilds were clearly not handling it well. People were crowding around the portals, screaming in terror. And I, who had been moved to a high tower for safety, watched the catastrophe with calmness and joy in my heart. Dad would be safe in the new reality. Abardo had guaranteed me that, so there was no need to worry. Suddenly, I felt myself shifting. No wonder for the next second I was in the Temple of Time. Abardo took my hand and gestured for me to touch the statue of the Time God. "Are you ready?" I nodded, and we simultaneously pressed our free hands against the statue. The next second, my eyes went eerily white, and I clenched my eyes shut, gripping the guy's hand tighter. Just as suddenly the darkness receded, and opening my eyes, hiding behind a tree and watching my dad. He has a happy life, a beautiful daughter, and a loving wife. He doesn't know about Pena because she doesn't exist in this universe. I wish the daughter were me. Abardo didn't mention one important detail. Liz and Eliza didn't remember their past, and I couldn't show my face to them, because then they would remember everything and their world would be destroyed. The two of them had copies of me, which, however, did not suffer any change. Apparently, in their eyes, I was always perfect. The childish laughter of my copy caressed my ears as Daddy tossed it up and immediately caught it, holding it tightly, loving it. I took one last look at this beautiful but so sad picture and snapped my fingers, stepping out of the dimension. I was now in a kind of underworld because there was no other way to call it that. Abardo had made his base a living hell, but I couldn't blame him for his wacky style. Turning around, I looked again at the two bubbles flying in the sky where Dad and Eliza were imprisoned. They were surrounded by a perfect world created from their own best wishes and dreams, and I was happy for them because they didn't have to disappear forever, or worse, be stuck in a kind of hell next to an overbearing, arrogant man. That atmosphere. At first, I was very hot and almost suffocated from the hot air currents. Then Abardo managed to give me full fire resistance with his powers, and it seemed to be getting better. Sighing and turning around, I saw Abardo push another man into the lava, causing him to let out heartbreaking death cries. Walking a few steps, he created a large, long table. With a snap of his fingers, he covered it with a tablecloth and stacked a decent amount of food there. Chairs appeared on different sides opposite each other, and glasses of red wine appeared next to them on the table. Basically, Abardo didn't need food at all, but apparently he got bored and decided to have dinner. I approached the table, and the guy, seeing me, smiled calmly and, reaching the edge of the table, sat down at it. I sat down at the chair closest to me, too. And there we are, sitting at a long table, so close to each other, yet so far away. We're separated by this very damn table, set with an enormous amount of food. I pick up my glass of wine and slowly begin to pull it down. After taking a few of those sips of the sweet drink, I place it back on the table and look closely at the food. Spaghetti, pepper, salt, mayonnaise, mustard, and a host of other food additives. Next to me lies an empty plate, a spoon, and fork. In the middle of the table is a cut-up baked chicken, and next to it, several cooked rabbits. Sliding the plate of spaghetti over to me, I piled it on my plate and then put one leg of chicken on it. Pouring a little mustard on it, I looked down at my plate. It looked appetizing, but I didn't feel like eating. When I looked in front of me, I saw Abardo frantically pouring a large amount of hot sauce into his plate. I sighed, picking at my plate, searching for the strength to swallow a bite. But my thoughts wouldn't go away. They clung to me, consuming me more and more, becoming one monster. I closed my eyes tiredly. I was sick of the fact that I couldn't die here, and even if I did, Abardo would resurrect me. Why was I getting so worked up? Well, if only because I'm immortal. I'm going to live here forever. entertaining this guy who's too much of a god. And no, he doesn't do anything. Well, that's the point. I've lost count, if there is one in this reality, how long I've been here. And I don't live, I don't survive, I exist. I can't do anything, and I sit here alone all the time. Why alone? Well, living in the same place as Eduardo, there's no other way to put it. He hardly ever talks. He only needs me to keep him from going crazy. And the only ray of light here are the worlds of my acquaintances. They're nice and perfect. But I literally have no right to make contact with anyone there for reasons unknown. And you wouldn't think I'm not the same pink, soft princess sitting locked in a castle waiting carelessly for her savior. No. Although maybe part of it is. But still, I've at least tried, many times, to reach out to Eduardo and beg him to give me at least some simple person to talk to. Someone I could talk to without going crazy with loneliness. But he's like a stone wall, like a thick oak tree, standing his ground and bending his own, not giving me anyone, even though he has the power to do so. Even on my attempts to talk to him normally, he simply keeps silent. At this rate, I'm going to go crazy. What difference does it make? Really, if I go crazy, he'll just throw me into the lava and make someone else, someone stronger, better, more attractive. Why did I think I'd be here forever? It's not long before I go insane. Unless, of course, I'm crazy right now. Matilda! Eduardo's voice woke me from my thoughts. Are you not in the mood? I opened my eyes tiredly and looked into his dark green eyes. No, I'm fine, I replied, muffled and lifeless. Even if I hadn't lied, would he have listened to me? No, but my answer, surprisingly, didn't sit well with him. No, he said more firmly and irritably. What happened? What happened? A chuckle came out of my throat. Then my voice sounded sorrowful and regretful, but still with a hint of what sounded like a not-so-healthy laugh. I don't know. I guess I'm just going crazy. Crazy with loneliness and hopelessness. What do you care? Matilda, you're important to me. What's important? Companionship? To keep you from going insane from loneliness? Yes, of course, for now. Because sooner or later, I'm going to fall apart, and then you'll just replace me. That'll never happen. Why not? Because... Eduardo hesitated for a moment. Because I've grown attached to you, and I'm not going to let you go. Isn't my companionship enough for you? Is it really important to have someone with you 24/7? Am I not enough? You barely talk to me, and you keep me like a bird in a cage. And I want my freedom, whatever it is, even a tavern, for God's sake. Come on, shrieked Eduardo, who had exploded. Let me kill you, and maybe it'll be easier. Come on, I replied, without a trace of sarcasm, without a backward thought, and with a kind of joy. I'd rather die than be here. And I was silent, waiting for an answer. And he was silent too, eyes wide open. The guy frowned, tilted his head, and thought. I wondered what he was thinking about. To kill me or not to kill me? Finally, he raised his head and looked me in the eyes like a cat claws at its last hope. Matilda, I agree to spend more time with you, he said, sighing. I couldn't believe we had you as a suicidal, depressed teenager. His still amazed look read, I'll try to make you comfortable and make you feel comfortable. I didn't like this game of feeding empty promises, but Eduardo was dead serious, and this time I decided to give in and play along, just a little bit. All right, let's see what happens. I can get you a room so you don't have to live in this place you don't like. Okay, that sounded much more tempting and probably the only thing I'm hoping for, however small. How do you live in this place? Suddenly, even for myself, I stopped the game. It was just curiosity playing in my soul, rushing to my throat and then out of it. I love this place. It's my ideal. Eduardo looked around admiringly. It's fantastic and so tantalizing, so sinister. What else is your ideal? I asked. Suddenly, he sank into my eyes like a falling cat behind a curtain, so piercingly and intently. But what was even more unexpected was that the long table began to suddenly become shorter, shortening the distance between us. The chairs also moved with it, as if glued together. My ideal is, the table was getting narrower and narrower. You! The table became a small square when Ebardo suddenly pressed his lips to mine. I shuddered, long forgotten about touch, and was not immediately able to respond to the kiss. But I managed to do something at the end. The kiss was crumpled and clumsy, and it was over rather quickly. I was filled with conflicting emotions. It wasn't good to date a guy like that, but on the other hand, he was the only person here, and there was a certain temptation in it all, especially now. Suddenly, a lump of orange-green colored magic appeared between us. "What the hell is that?" I exclaimed, looking at the spherical thing. "I have no idea myself. I think it's—" The ball finally took shape. A red kitten with dull green eyes was born. He wiggled his ear and jumped on my lap. I looked at the boy. He just nodded, as if agreeing to let it stay. When I opened my eyes, I saw the ruined netherworld. There was coldness and loneliness. As I turned around, I suddenly saw Ebardo bound in chains and struggling to free himself. There was a fury in his eyes that I had never seen before. It was beastly, no, monstrous, ready to tear you to pieces. But gradually, panic began to show in his eyes. "What is this?" I approached the bound Ebardo, and then I jerked back, jerking away sharply. I sobbed quietly in horror. They were skin-tone chains. Not knowing what to do and looking around in panic, I suddenly felt someone's gaze on me. Startled by it, I first glanced at Ebardo, who wasn't looking at me at all, and then slowly followed his gaze. Upon seeing them, my eyes widened. It was the time god and some white-haired man. Was he human, with huge, open, black and red wings? "Why am I in chains?" Ebardo shrieked furiously, which almost made me shriek and flinch to the side. "You put them on me!" "I'm not capable of such a thing." The cold, frightening voice made me flinch for the umpteenth time. "I was created only to observe." And then the white-haired man spoke up. His voice was not so frightening, but it was not calm, and rather angry and nervous. "You lost the bet, Ebardo. If words had weight, these particular ones would be like 400 elephants. And you—" The look in those violet eyes was burning through me, as if it were looking into my very soul and was no less creepy than the friends. "And you, overcoming your own moral standards, killed someone who was necessary to the multiverse. You're both going to the prison of time." It was cold enough in here. I could hear Ebardo screaming in the room next door, hitting the walls in rage and shouting his crazy words about being a creator and a god over and over again. And I just huddled in the corner of the room, doing nothing, not moving. I was afraid of what was going to happen next, and I think I was also starting to go slowly, drop by drop, insane. I sat there, staring at one point and thinking about everything. About everything, as long as I didn't go insane too fast. There was no magic in this place, almost no sounds, and it seemed like the prisoners were dead. I didn't feel particularly alive either. I didn't want to get up, didn't even want to think. Everything was so drenched in longing that I felt like I was losing my color, the color of life, because now it was completely meaningless. And I thought that there was no prison worse than Vidomnia, because there you lose the most important thing you have. But here you don't lose anything. It's still there. It's just discolored, and it seems like forever. And no matter how much I deny it, it seems like this prison is worse. Finally, I stand up. My legs aren't stiff at all, which is surprising. I tried to use the spark to get out of here at first. But how could I when the creator and warden of this prison is the time god himself? I walk slowly toward Ebardo's room. I pass the other prisoners. There is no color in them. They are the same as this prison, as if they have merged with it into one. All life has gone out of them. They didn't even seem to breathe. So quiet was this place. Finally, I saw Ebardo himself, lost all hope and huddled in a corner. How long had he been raging? An hour? 2 hours? Maybe a day or a month? I didn't know. There's no time here. "There's nothing here. I just sat next to him. His fists were torn to shreds, blood dripping from them. There was blood on the wall, too, but not a single crack from his very hard blows. He didn't react in any way. He hugged his legs and mumbled quietly to himself. Finally, he looked at me, and I looked at him. There was desperation in our eyes. I looked through him. A cold tear formed on my cheek, and soon the two of them lost their color.